I was meant to address you on the Africa we want, because we have gathered here as the brightest young minds of Africa, and we want to reflect on how we can work together to see that our future is indeed bright. And when you hear the phrase, the Africa we want, you probably are, this comes to mind, the Agenda 2063, which is meant to be a blueprint for us to transform Africa into the global powerhouse of the future. What does that mean to us, the global powerhouse of the future? Some of us, when we think about a shining future for Africa, maybe think there are no more hawkers, the streets are clean, traffic is orderly, no corruption, no talk of third terms, this bright future. Being the powerhouse, the global powerhouse of the future might also mean that we feed the world, that we are the scientific and cultural center of the universe. So there are all sorts of ideas in your mind. There's no more malaria. So depending on what your discipline is, you probably have, someone had a dream for energy for all. So we have an idea of this Africa that we want in 2063. Unfortunately, many of us in 2063 is 40 years away, 45. I will be nearly 90, I think. Definitely I'll be in my 80s. So I think many of us will be not far from there. So I would suggest that we focus on how we can transform the Africa we have into this Africa that we want. And one filmmaker has said, to move forward, you must reclaim the past. In the past, you find the future and understand the present. And this idea is really very well articulated for me in the Ghanaian concept, or the Akan, I think it's the Akan people of Ghana, that have this concept of Sankofa. I will not attempt to pronounce those words, but it really means that it is not taboo to go back and fetch what you forgot. And the Sankofa bird is a mythical bird that goes forward while looking back, and it holds an egg in its mouth, which signifies the future. So it encompasses what we are talking about, going forward, not forgetting what has passed, understanding the present. And I'd like us to keep this in mind as we go forward. And what it really tells us, what Sankofa tells us, is that whatever we've lost, whatever we've forgotten, whatever we've foregone, whatever we've been stripped of, someone said that we can no longer get back the natural resources functioning, I think, or maybe the natural resources themselves, but we can restore the biodiversity functioning. So whatever we've been stripped of can be reclaimed, can be revived, can be preserved, and can be perpetuated. Now, when I quit engineering, I entered the educational sciences proper, and I always find it useful to think about things in educational terms. So I will think about the past in terms of the way we are educated. Many of us know that we are told that Africa was discovered river by river, mountain by mountain, not many years ago, correct? And for me, I mean, this was my history. This is what I learned in history. And I would say it's really not a correct picture. And maybe that's why my Nigerian brothers, I am told, and sisters, it's not only the fault of the men, abandoned history for 15 years. Is it true that you did not have history in your schools for 15 years? This is what I'm told. But probably if you're going to be teaching about being discovered, I would say get rid of it. But I was very, very happy not long ago to find out about the great Zimbabwe. Only 2 years ago, I did not know that this place existed on Earth. Only 2 years ago, I found out about it on a BBC documentary. And last August, I visited it. This is something that was built in the 11th century. And touching it physically, for me, was such an inspiring moment. This is the Africa we had that we do not know we had. And I negated the words of a historian called Hugh Roper, who said, perhaps in the future there will be some African history to teach. At present, there is none or very little. There's only the history of Europeans in Africa. The rest is darkness, and darkness is not a subject for history. He said this in the 1960s. And as far as he was concerned, 1960s, going back, only darkness in Africa, except the history of Europeans in Africa. This is obviously patently untrue, and we know that. This is an Ethiopian philosopher that I found out was positing on the human condition 100 years before Kant or Locke or Hume were talking about what it meant to be human in the European Enlightenment. I did not know of his existence. I found out that the oldest university on earth is located here in Africa, also maybe a year or two ago. And that is this university in Fez, which was founded in 859. And in the same location is also the oldest library in the world. And we Africans deprecatingly say about ourselves that if you want to hide something from an African, put it in a book. This is really unfortunate. I know that there are people from these two universities in the room, but in fact, Oxford University was founded 2.5 centuries later. And Cambridge, an additional century later. But I don't know if we are conscious of it in this moment. The date of this is yesterday. The Vice Chancellor of the University of Oxford was giving a speech on 900 years of education in Oxford. It's slightly more than that. And I needed to take my calculator out to find out, obviously, Al-Karain, I can't really pronounce it, is older. But who is telling this story? None of us. And if we are none of us telling it, you can be sure no one else is. Fortunately, you can, well, just a little additional fact about this university is that it was actually founded by 2 young women. And for me, why this is so inspiring as a woman is because we are always being told, fight for your rights, get your rights back. I only have to reach back in my own history and reclaim my rights, because women were present and active in education. But I was just going to say that fortunately, you can always look this stuff up on the internet. And about a few months ago, I put this search term into Google, and this came up. So in some small text, it says the oldest one is in Fez, Morocco, but please take care to note that the oldest is University of Bologna in Italy, in Europe. So unfortunately, Oxford has to take the 3rd place of the oldest English in the English-speaking world, because, you know, the other 2 spots are taken. Oldest in the world and oldest in Europe are already taken. But what this tells me is if you look, without looking further into things, you may stumble upon stories that are told that are not correct, simply because we don't take the time to look into our own past. Coming to my own country, Uganda, a Catholic priest called Robert Felkin observed a cesarean delivery in 1879. This was 30 years after the first use of anesthesia in any part of the world was used in a hospital. 30 years later, rather 30 years earlier, anesthesia was used for the first time in a hospital worldwide. And Dr. Felkin observed this cesarean delivery in Uganda, and he recorded it. He said the patient was intoxicated with banana wine. The surgeon, there are other words in between that I skipped. The surgeon completed the uterine incision. The child was removed, the cord cut. Everything was then secured with 7 sharp spikes. A root paste was applied. A bandage of bark cloth was wrapped around it. And 11 days after the operation, the wound was entirely healed. What he observed is that this was so masterfully done, it was clearly being done for many years previously. It was not a new procedure. It was only observed then. And this is the problem with people saying things were discovered at such and such a moment. This is when they were observed by external people. We don't know when they started. And what it tells me is that we Africans were always thinking about things, solving our own problems, progressing in scientific ways to solve problems. We observed, we tested, and we developed. And when formal education systems came, unfortunately, this is what was said by the policy makers of the day, that the traditional educational structures were immoral and dangerous and to be avoided at all costs. If the African child cannot learn habits of cleanliness and order and notions of morals and religion in his own home, he should learn them at school. And this is the moment when we began to lose everything that we had learned for centuries and centuries. Fortunately, a lot of this information is not completely lost to us because, in fact, in Africa, half the children on the continent will never set foot in a classroom. That is not to say that they will grow up uneducated. They are in this informal parallel system that still carries the knowledge of our ancestors, the knowledge of how they adapted to their environment, the knowledge how they continue to adapt to this environment. Someone earlier asked how many PhDs were involved in the development of M-Pesa. We are still developing these solutions outside academia. You would find that many of these people probably did not go very far in school. And so, unfortunately, many educated Africans are unaware that we are in cultural bondage. We are not very strongly knowledgeable about our own past and our own history and our own culture. And because our own education is so outward-looking, it has bred among us, even the uneducated, a kind of African self-contempt. We despise anything that is African. We look down on it. We speak poorly of it. We don't trust it. We reject it. And these are the roots of our education system, in fact. So I want to move on to the Africa that we do have, now that we've looked a bit at the Africa we had. And the systems of education, you take a 6-year-old running around in the maize field, you bring them to class, you show them this symbol here is A, and A is for apple. This does not even look like anything that anyone can eat. So I don't know what a child should make of this. They don't know what A is. They don't know what this thing is. And they continue with their learning about how Tiffany and Elliot are running through the meadows or riding ponies or roasting marshmallows in winter. And if the poor child asks, what are these things? What is Tiffany? Even the name Tiffany can be strange to a poor rural child. What is Tiffany? Is it edible? And unfortunately for such a child, they are told to shush and repeat, A is for what? You know how it goes. Good students repeat what the teacher says. Why isn't A for anthill? What person that lives in Africa does not recognize this picture? So if you're going to learn the alphabet and learn how to speak English, at least name things in your own environment. And these are things that we the educated, unfortunately, are so divorced from. We don't know that we are miseducating. We're just perpetuating this miseducation, our own miseducation for that matter. So that's why, because I learned all about the Canadian prairies, I could very easily identify a wheat plant. I've never seen one in real life, mind you. But I could not identify a fene tree, a jackfruit tree, that's in my own parents' backyard. So how can we say that we, the people in this room, including myself, are going to transform the Africa we have into the Africa we want? We here in the room, including myself. I like to think that the things I'm talking about are not very removed from what you're familiar with. So I just want to show, well, because, this is just to say that other people now also feel that they can tell us about our problems. I love Megan. I've watched Suits, the whole season, all the seasons available, I've watched them. But, I mean, anyone can come and tell us about our problems. What are we saying? We should, well, sometimes we also go over there and tell them about theirs. But I wanted to also come back to this. I really liked this. And I wanted to explain to you, I had never seen this until this morning, so thanks for sharing. Where was he? I wanted to explain to you that in Uganda, this Luzinda is a musician who in 2016, her nudes were leaked. Huh? Photos of her nude were leaked. That's why I think she was trending in Uganda. But ask yourself, we tell the story of internet penetration, almost 100%, but we don't tell the full story. What are people using the internet for? It's supposed to be connecting to this wealth of knowledge, but we don't tell the whole story because we do not know what the Africa we have. How can we then transform it into the Africa we want? I have a short clip to show you on the Africa we have. You have to play it. There's no sound. Just pause it, please. Shall I go? Okay.
I take a seat at Giradogo Presby School in the Pandai district of the Northern Region. My aim is to find out how students in JHS2 were coping with information communication technology lessons without computers. Today's lesson is how to create a folder.
To create a folder. Before you can able to create a folder,
Pardon the spelling error and concentrate on what the teacher has to say about how to create a folder.
create a folder. Before you can able to create a folder, when you on your boot on your computer, you have some place you click. You click and you see the place folder. And when you click, the folder will, the empty folder will appear. And then you open it and put all your documents inside.
I am confused about what the teacher is saying, so I intervened. Do you know what a folder is?
Who knows what a folder is? Folder is a symbol where you keep or keep your what? Documents inside for the future use.
What did your teacher say?
Say that a folder is where you keep your documents for future use.
Folder is a kind of storage device which where the documents are kept.
A folder is a form of distance. It's a form of picture when you keep your distance, your things inside. Example like information or documents.
Kind of a computer where file or data input.
What is happening here is sad, perhaps tragic. This teacher has been employed under the National Youth Employment Program. He is expected to impart knowledge to the children. Unfortunately, the children don't understand the lessons, but the teacher insists they are doing very well.
Yes, they understand. Yeah, the reason why I'm sure that they understand is that when I contest them class tests or class exercise. Yeah.
And as a person who is in education, the people in this room, we have to understand that we can do all the pieces of research that we like. If we are living in an Africa like this where we don't know what's going on, in fact. We are used to where our own children go and we complain that they carry heavy bags in the morning and wake up too early. This is a very small part of our reality. And this is only in education. And not to paint a bad picture of Ghana, this is not only happening in Ghana, you all know that. Let us look at a scientist in Ghana who's doing some very good transdisciplinary research. She's called Amanda Graft Akins, and but many people without us are solving their own problems, however, they are solving them. So one here is a mentally disturbed person who's being held in a prayer camp and being prayed over. This is someone in a neighborhood who has to carry around something very heavy so they don't wander away too far and maybe get run over. And it's not as if these people do not love their relatives. It's just the solution that they find. And if we think about our own solutions of mental health without understanding what's really going on, we are doing no work, in my opinion. And this one here is a bit of graffiti. You might call it graffiti, but again, it's a person with mental health problems who keeps writing down the date 3rd September 2001, which is clearly a moment that was crucial to, pivotal for them. And this mental health worker, by partnering with photographers, with artists, could then come up with a contextually relevant, co-created solution to dealing with the issue of mental health that also involved the carers, the medical health workers, and other members of the community. But this was only while they had to understand the Africa that we have more fully. So I just want to end with saying that transforming the Africa that we have into the Africa we want, requires us to enter a deep dialogue. We have to be much more humble. We have to understand that the knowledge we have is not all the knowledge that there is, or even the most important knowledge. We have to stop using phrases like, we shall push our research to the policymakers. Or we should go down to the ground, go down there, to the grassroots. We have to learn how to communicate, and communication includes listening. We don't always listen. We want to go and speak. And even when you listen, you have to be open to other kinds of understandings, other kinds of knowledge, other kinds of experiences. Because this is how we build a full picture of the Africa that we want, how we can transform it in any case. So as we go for our walk this afternoon, I would like us to really think on all the research that we do, and remember that there is nothing that happens in reality that happens component by component. You don't have first malaria happening over there, and then after that mosquitoes over there, and then after that children in the hospital, or breastfeeding not happening. I mean, it happens all together. So you can't study it one by one. That's why we need to speak to one another across disciplines. But we also have to speak across the past and the present. We really have to take a deep interest in our past. We have to stop the language. I mean, of course, there are many ways in which things have already been solved, especially in the physical sciences. It's easy to transfer things, but not in the social sciences. You cannot bring theories on on how people live and transport them here. As much as they are best practices, they simply will not work. And I would like to say, even for some of the physical sciences, this is another continent. It has a different history. It has a different composition. So we have to think about how we speak across disciplines, speak across the past and the present, speak across society and science. Many of us today in this conference have been speaking to one another as fellow scientists. But if you're honest, you did not understand half of what your fellow scientists were saying. So we have to learn how to communicate, even among ourselves. To do good transdisciplinary or interdisciplinary research, we have to learn how to communicate. Because we speak and we write, we think we are good communicators, but we can improve. Like, I'm not saying we are bad, but we can improve. So as we go on our walk today, let us think about how we can engage more deeply with our past, with our present, so that we can transform Africa into the Africa we want. And let's keep the idea of Sankofa in front of our minds. Thank you very much. I'm an expert of any sort. I'm just an interested person. I'll start with the last one. You ask if there are any anthropological documents or sources where you can know more. I found out about many of these things from a BBC documentary. I forget what it's called. I'll share it with you later. But they've looked at Africa over many centuries. And there's plenty of information that's already available, actually. Some that was recorded by ourselves, some by people who are visiting us. And but also, we look down on studies like history, unfortunately. So we don't have a lot of Africans interested in doing history. So we could be doing more. And that's why we really have to be careful when we are always saying, I'm a big fan of STEM. STEM is really important. But we must also think about the arts and humanities and social sciences. You cannot understand anything that's going on in society without studying these fields. And Catherine was asking, what advice do I have on what we can do when we have situations like this? And it's related to your question, Amna. Unfortunately, we have to really to be bold enough to do some things different. In my opinion, having this class in that location without a computer is a complete waste of time. We need ICT skills, sure. And maybe from what you are saying about the iPhone, a lot of these people have phones. Maybe there's something that resembles a folder on a phone. So then do not follow what the Ministry of Education says you should follow, even though it does not fit. And sometimes they lack, the people who implement these policies lack our engagement. We don't engage them. And we wait for them to come and find us, whereas we really should go, observe this and say, how did this come about? Who do I need to contact? Not long after I finished my PhD, I thought, let me go to the Ministry of Education and see what research they're doing and see if I can ask the questions that are relevant to them. Because after I finished my PhD, I brought my PhD thesis and I said, okay, so now I've done this work, blah, blah, blah. Okay, did you ask this question, no. Okay, did you find out about this and this? No. What did you do? I did this and this and this. Interesting. Okay, just give it to us, we shall read it, We don't create these questions together. So if you know what's going on, then you can create more relevant questions. And if we are only 198 scientists per million in Africa, and we're wasting time, I'm sorry to say, I don't say we're wasting time with the research we are doing, but we could be doing a lot more with the time we are spending on our research if we were asking really the most important questions possible. Do understand me, I'm not saying we're asking bad questions, but let's just rethink the questions that we're asking. And whose question is this? My PhD was entirely my own question. Unfortunately, not many other people were interested in it. And how did I come out to the question? I read literature, I did this and the other. I just sat in the university and decided what topic I was going to work on. It would have saved me 4 years of working on a question that was not all that important to many other people if I'd just gone to the Ministry of Education before I started my PhD. Unfortunately, when I went back to present it to them, mind you, they told me, we don't have a research unit in the whole of Ministry of Education. So we have a lot that we can contribute, but we don't take that step.